Hey, folks, did you know that Just Coffee has a tagline of justice from the grounds up? And that means that they ensure that all creatures from being to being is treated with respect. The earth is being taken care of by the farmer. The farmer is paid fairly by Just Coffee, and the beans are roasted to order, not sitting around for months on shelves. And they have a feature called a coffee tracker. And on the bottom of every bag is a 5-digit number. Hop on their website, plug in that number, and you can see exactly who grew your coffee and how much they were paid for it. It's like going to the farmer's market and knowing the farmer you're buying from. That level of transparency is going above and beyond what retailers are required to do. And those types of clean and transparent actions are just one of the things that I love about Just Coffee. Check them out now, justcoffee.coop. You can buy the Majority Report blend or check out all their other great blends. And the code is MR25, 25% off of all coffee to celebrate their birthday. The code MR25, 25% off of all coffee. Also, one of our sponsors today, telling us there are 365 days in a year, which means there are 365 days when you might need to buy someone a birthday present. Finding the perfect gift for everyone, virtually impossible. But I say virtually because you can simplify the process with an Aura digital picture frame. Ranked the #1 digital picture frame by Wirecutter, Aura frames are easy to set up, they're easy to update, they're easy to enjoy. Plus, Aura frames are preloaded with photos and gift messages, which you preload. So whether you're giving the frame to your best friend, your dad, or your Aunt Susan, you can be sure your gift is personalized just for them. Aura frames are super easy. It's a great gift for people who are a little bit technically challenged. You can literally put your pictures on there before taking it out of the box. You can set up their entire experience. It's great. Great way to keep in touch. Show your parents pictures of your kids. Show your friends what you're up to. Every Aura frame comes with unlimited storage, so you can preload the frame with as many photos as you want. All you need is a free Aura app and a Wi-Fi connection. Right now, Aura is having their very first friends and family sale, and we got an exclusive offer just for our listeners. For limited time only, you can get $35 off their best-selling frame by visiting auraframes.com using the promo code MAJORITY. That's auraframes.com, A-U-R-A, frames.com, promo code MAJORITY. This is the best offer of the season, so don't miss out. Terms and conditions apply. Now, time for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, August 21st, 2024. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, David Dayen, executive editor at the American Prospect, joined Sam in a conversation they had on Sunday before the DNC about some of Harris's economic proposals. Also on the program today, night 2 of the DNC saw speeches from Bernie Sanders, First Gentleman Doug Emhoff, and Michelle and Barack Obama, and more. But outside, anti-genocide protests escalated, multiple demonstrators hospitalized, and dozens more arrested. Harris and Walz trolled the Trump campaign by filling 2 arenas at once, holding a packed rally in Milwaukee where the RNC was held, as the DNC packs the Chicago center, wherever the hell they're having it. This is huge news. Montana becomes the 8th state where abortion will be on the ballot. Key for John Tester's race and Democrats maintaining a Senate majority. All that, economic stuff, housing, this hinges on Harris, if she wins, having the Senate. Polling shows North Carolina is now a toss-up, giving Harris multiple paths to victory. Shocker, the fake ceasefire deal is collapsing. Israeli media reports that the bodies of 6 hostages recovered in Gaza yesterday were likely killed by the IDF. Hamas said this months ago. And by the way, U.S. media is just not reporting this. Israel strikes another school in Gaza, killing at least 12 people yesterday. No doubt they're doing this as the DNC distracts the public. DeSantis' loony school board candidates got trounced in Florida yesterday. But in worse news, the pro-crypto Democrat defeated the Elizabeth Warren-backed opponent in Arizona's 3rd in a primary by 40 votes. And lastly, a Trump judge deems the FTC's non-compete ban unconstitutional. That's got to be appealed, but just an example of what the judiciary can do when Republicans get elected. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. It is Hump Day, but I am just here.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm a solo Hump Day.
So I get all the royalties for the Hump Day trademark. That's, cha-ching.
It's vertical integration, I think. I don't know. I'm not an economist.
Me neither. Don't ask me to do math. But Sam is out on vacation for the rest of this week and all of next week. But
except for the next 2 nights.
For the next 2 nights, he'll be joining us remotely to break down nights 3 and 4 of the DNC. So stay tuned for that. I think we'll probably go live around 8 p.m. Eastern, although we could push that back because it's 7 p.m. Central where Chicago's doing it, and I was falling asleep last night because I'm trying to watch the whole thing, but it goes late.
I will say on Monday night when I was getting ready for bed and then realizing Biden was still talking, I'm like, oh, thank God we weren't covering this.
Oh my gosh, I know, but tonight it's probably going to go long. But stay with us and watch. It'll be really fun. We'll have
be
some
having
drinks.
fun in studio.
Yeah, exactly. Little drinky, maybe a little smoky. Yeah, we'll see. I take that from I'm an avid listener of Chris Sims's podcast. That's what he describes it as. So little NFL podcast plug. Anyway, so last night, both Michelle and Barack Obama spoke at the DNC. Bernie Sanders also spoke. First Gentleman Doug Emhoff spoke about how he met Kamala Harris and a lot of those personal things. But the headliners were Michelle and Barack Obama. And Michelle Obama gave a really personal speech, a lot of praise for her. We will play some of that later in the show. But Obama followed her, and we know this, one of the most gifted orators that we've seen in politics. And what I'm really liking about this moment for the Democrats is that we're past the point of moralizing about the Republicans and this stoic patriotism that Biden and frankly Hillary Clinton seemed to think was effective, of making this voting for Democrats this solemn duty to democracy, and then talking about the threat that Republicans pose in a way that I think makes people turned off to the idea of engaging in politics. The Harris-Walz campaign has decided to lean into the fun of it and lean into actually doing partisanship, running against the Republicans, mocking them. And we'll get to how the Harris campaign did that more specifically, but it seems like Obama kind of got the message. This is going to drive Trump crazy. For just the podcast audience, Obama makes a gesture with his hands here. I'll explain what that means after
It attacks
we play
my
it.
manhood unfairly, I might add.
Gather here tonight, the people who will decide this election are asking a very simple question. Who will fight for me? Who's thinking about my future? about my children's future, about our future together. One thing is for certain, Donald Trump is not losing sleep over that question. Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. It has been a constant stream of gripes and grievances that's actually been getting worse now that he's afraid of losing to Kamala. There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes.
There's that gesture. Yeah! His dick is small!
Can we say JD fucks couches? Yes, we can. Can we say Donald Trump has a small dick?
Yes, we can. I love that. Look, I mean, these are little things that I just think are fun because they realize how easy it is to trigger Trump. I mean, what I've loved about what Harris has done as well is she's not making her gender or her race the central focus of her campaign. That's also what struck me when Hillary Clinton spoke, where she's mentioning herself in the same breath as Shirley Chisholm, and like, I'm a continuation of the legacy. Shirley Chisholm ran for president in 1972 as the first black woman to run for president in this incredibly trailblazing manner. Hillary Clinton,
she's Arkansas Shirley Chisholm.
You were the first lady, then a senator. Like I find her, her very self-serving placement of herself in history in that manner, with much more radical and risk-taking figures, to be quite narcissistic. But putting that aside for a second, it also, her tactic played into Trump's hands, where Harris is allowing them to flail about and gnash their teeth about her race and her gender, while she focuses on policies and trying to move the country forward in a way that I just think appeals to people more. And then they're
hysterical sky is falling Chicken Little act that they were running because Biden couldn't get off his ass in campaign.
Exactly. It was it was a Debbie Downer, and Obama is buying into that, trolling Trump, and yeah, like, this will bother him. I'm old enough to remember when he bragged about his penis size during the
First
Republican
of all, there's not even reporting that says it's small. Any reporting available says that it's fine size. It just looks like a toadstool. Okay. Ask Stormy.
The width is just as important as the length. Okay. I'm sorry.
We're in the first half. So
I forgot. Stop calling me chode. All right. Okay, we're in the first half. Anyway, bonk. Tim Walz and the Harris campaign, in the midst of all of this, went to Milwaukee. This was a really smart move. The Republicans held their convention in Milwaukee. They basically packed this entire arena also to trigger Trump and make him lash out. This is an effective strategy, too, because he will lash out about this. On one hand, you have Obama doing that. And then here's Tim Walz speaking before Harris in Milwaukee, again, where the RNC was held last month. So they're packing two arenas at once, the convention in Chicago, then this rally in Milwaukee. And again, another improvement on past campaigns, actually campaigning in Wisconsin. This is, I think, the third time that the campaign has already done events there since the campaign launched last month. So they're doing the work as well of campaigning, appreciative of that from a strategic perspective. Here's Walz talking about Donald Trump.
You know, it was only a month ago that the Republican Party gathered for their convention right here on this very spot. It doesn't sound like any of you watched it, but in case you didn't, after promising us a speech that was going to be about unity and promising that he was a changed man. Donald Trump subjected us to 92 minutes of ranting and raving insanity. Now look, they left here riding high. They were feeling good. This thing was over. Well, trust me, Milwaukee, a hell of a lot can change in 4 weeks. You run a campaign based on fear like them, you're going to run into a little trouble when you run into a campaign that's based on joy. These guys are focused on the past, like the 1850s past. This campaign's focused on your future.
Forward looking. Yeah, and this is, I'm repeating myself, but you know, the thing about Republicans is that pointing out that they're cruel, they're like, yeah, duh.
Yeah, that's why people like us.
That's the whole point.
We're organized cruelty, yeah.
Right. It's the same thing with pointing out that Trump's a liar. Republican voters are like, yeah.
It works. Okay, you should try it sometime.
They're like they think all politicians lie because there's such cynicism.
Well, and it's true.
And it's true. But even in just like the notions of democratic change, they don't believe in those things because that would mean believing in something more than self-interest. So they internalize self-interest and callousness and cruelty as virtue. And so when Hillary Clinton and even Biden, who I think, you know, won mostly on the fact that it was the pandemic and Trump was so historically unpopular, when they point that out or focus the campaign on moralizing about that, the Republican base goes, yeah, we want to own that. That's a part of what we want to do. We want to inflict cruelty on groups that are not a part of the existing power structure here. So you play exactly into their hands. And when you act shocked about it, they are emboldened. So this is about drawing a contrast and marginalizing them. Marginalizing the bullies, punching back against the bullies. That's how you make them into a joke. That's how you win.
You have to diminish them.
Exactly.
Like they benefit from you maximizing them and puffing them up. Whereas if you can call them, say, weird, and because for 50 years it's been this, well, this represents a silent majority thing. What that really means is that our electorate is stacked towards a certain type of person, even a little bit maybe reactionary and propertied. And if they can turn out, exactly, and if they can turn them out, then they can win elections. But that's a smaller and smaller group of people, and the people that genuinely subscribe to that, they are weird.
Right, and that's what obviously I think has been the best part tactically of how the Democrats have run this time. Make them look uncool. Make them look small. Now. We'll get to David Dayen and his conversation with Sam in just a second, but I also wanted to highlight the fact that Bernie Sanders did speak last night at the DNC, and he made this remark where initially I thought, oh, is he talking about himself and his 2 runs for president when he speaks about money in politics in primaries? And I don't think that's the case, actually. He was, I think, specifically referring here to AIPAC and the dark Republican money that was poured into races against Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush and was successful in defeating some of the most progressive members of Congress on behalf of Israel, but also on behalf of a wide swath of conservative interests that they were able to launder through AIPAC's outfit. I appreciated Bernie alluding to this last night. This was that part of his remarks.
Going to win this struggle because this is precisely what the American people want from their government. And my friends, at the very top of that to-do list is the need to get big money out of our political process. Billionaires in both parties should not be able to buy elections, including primary elections.
I think that is what he was referencing, not his primary, although it would apply in that instance as well.
Right.
This
is an urgent problem in how Israel aligned, whether it's the DMFI or AIPAC, are just buying elections and foreclosing and going after the squad. And it's not to say that like a larger part of it was just say how Bowman's district was redrawn, for instance. Like it's not exclusively like a left problem, but they are picking.
But it was
people that
redrawn, by a very conservative party chair,
exactly,
who did not like AOC. Although now Jay Jacobs, I think, is saying some more positive things about her. But
the spending, the spending is ridiculous. It makes it impossible to compete.
And this is a problem that I think needs to be a conversation that needs to be revived, as Matt says, because this is not a good development. Both Harris and Trump are the first. It's the first time in 20 years that these campaigns have not revealed their big money bundlers to the public. It's not legal. It's not a legal requirement for you to disclose bundlers in terms of like very wealthy people that bundle other donors together to fundraise for your campaign. It's insane that that's not required, but it's customary. And it's the first time in 20 years that neither of them have done so. I don't think that's an encouraging development. And I was appreciative of Bernie Sanders making that clear last night at the DNC with the time that he was allotted. So with that said, we have a word from some of our sponsors, and then we will take you to a conversation that Sam had with David Dayen right before the DNC started about what Harris's economic platform could look like. We'll be back with you in just a second.
Hey, folks, summer's finally here. I may even take a vacation. But that means more time spent outside. That means mowing the lawn for some of you. That means days at the beach, hopefully for me soon, having a drink on your deck, or walking around outside, going to smorgasbord. Make sure you're taking extra care of your hair this summer, since sun, salt, and SPF can affect your hair health. Now is the perfect time to start taking Nutrafol. Nutrafol, the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, with over 1 million people seeing thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are physician formulated. They use 100% drug-free ingredients. Their patented technology provides consistent, reliable results without compromising your sex life. I mean, that's basically when I started to feel like I was getting a little bit of thinning, I decided to try Nutrafol, and I've had great results. I still take it, frankly. And one of the things that makes you feel a little bit more confident, many supplements rely solely on ingredient studies. In other words, they've got this and that, they got this and that, and they look at the separate studies on specific ingredients. Well, Nutrafol clinically tests its final formulations with all the ingredients together to ensure their efficacy. In a clinical study, 84% of men showed improvement in their hair after 6 months taking Nutrafol's men's hair growth supplements. You can take their hair wellness quiz over at Nutrafol.com/men for a personalized hair health plan based on your specific root causes. See what I did there? With Nutrafol, building hair growth routine is simple. Purchase online, no prescription or doctor visit is required. Free shipping, automated deliveries ensure you'll never miss a day. You'll see results in 3 to 6 months. Take the first step towards achieving your hair growth goals. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men. Enter the promo code TMR. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men, spelled Nutrafol.com/men. Promo code TMR. That's Nutrafol.com. Promo code TMR. Link in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. Also, another sponsor of the program today. You want your home to be a sanctuary? Well, it could be. Cozy Earth has helped me when I want to, get some rest. I sleep on sheets that are temperature regulating. When I want to just chill, I got these joggers and the sweatshirt and a hoodie that, frankly, look good enough. I can wear it outside too, but they're just super comfortable. Makes me want to sit on the couch and tell my kids to be quiet. Thanks to Cozy Earth for sponsoring this episode. You can unlock an exclusive 40% discount using the code Majority Report at cozyearth.com/Majority Report. I got sheets from Cozy Earth. I got really soft towels from Cozy Earth. I've got soft but durable feeling, thin but warm, temperature regulating hoodie and joggers. It's amazing. You can feel the difference with Cozy Earth's best-selling bamboo sheet set made from 100% premium viscose. It's from bamboo. It makes them, Cozy Earth's sheets, incredibly breathable. They are uniquely soft. They only get softer with every wash. They're much more durable than other sheets, which I can tell you, when you get to my age, you start to realize, like, sheets wear out. Comes with a 100-night sleep trial. If you're not completely in love, return it for a full refund. Cozy Earth also has luxury bath sheets. They're super soft and plush towels, crafted with a unique blend of cotton and bamboo viscose, using innovative zero-twist technology. I don't know what that means, but they're super soft and they're super absorbent. Cozy Earth sheets are so breathable, you will sleep several degrees cooler, which is huge for me. And like I say, they're made from viscose, from bamboo. Bamboo is incredibly sustainable. It's a weed. So be careful when you grow bamboo in front of your house. People do it sometimes, and it just spreads like wildfire. Cozy Earth prides itself on being responsible for production of all its products. Cozy Earth bedding and bath products have a 10-year warranty, showing their commitment to quality. Upgrade your nights and transform your days with Cozy Earth. You can get 40% off at cozyearth.com/Majority Report using the code Majority Report. So that's cozyearth.com/Majority Report using the code Majority Report. Don't forget to tell them we sent you in the post-purchase survey, and you'll get some free socks. I actually have Cozy Earth socks too, and they are exceedingly comfortable. We'll put a link in the podcast and YouTube description for that too. Now back to Emma. We are back. Sam Seder, the Majority Report. Joining me now, David Dayen, the executive editor of The American Prospect. We are recording, David, just a day before you're headed to Chicago. This is on Sunday. You're headed to Chicago tomorrow for the Democratic convention.
I thought we were going to make this like it was the AI version of me, and like this is actually Tuesday, and I'm in two places at once.
There's a lot of people who think you're AI anyways, even before this became popular. So,
right.
Based upon how prolific you are. There's been years, actually, where I've wondered that. But all right, putting that aside, I wanted to talk to you about, there's two pieces that you've written that dovetail with the third, which is you wrote about the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, the sort of bizarrely named, but understandably named.
Hey, look, inflation went down after it passed. You can't deny branding.
Yeah, it's true.
Branding works.
There you go.
That's the main reason why inflation went down. They passed a bill called the Inflation Reduction Act.
Because that comes up in the context of Harris, who has unveiled at least the broad strokes of her economic program.
Right.
So you did a 2-year look in on the Inflation Reduction Act. You also had a piece that referenced that was about a piece that Jonathan Chait wrote, comparing the Biden presidency with the Obama presidency, and really in terms of like what Harris has apparently, or at least seemingly done, which is to pick up this mantle. And let's just start with this notion. Chait was, as you recounted, to be honest, I didn't read his piece. But as you recounted, he said Biden sort of inexplicably picked up the mantle of the progressive left in the Democratic Party, and at least in the context of the economic policy, I want to make that clear to everybody. Pursued what I would say the most progressive economic policies of maybe since Johnson, and he was like, it was inexplicable, and let's just take it from there because it was explicable. You made the point. Yeah. There were two very prominent reasons for that: Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah. So, and just to be clear, Harold Meyerson wrote that piece.
I'm sorry. Okay,
for the Prospect, but yeah, I'm familiar with it, obviously. So, yeah, I mean, the whole psychology of this goes back to the fact that John Chait wrote a book. John Chait, my old University of Michigan pal, who we went there at the same time. Actually, I'm using the word pal very loosely.
Yeah.
So he wrote a book at the end of 2016 called Audacity, about how great the Obama era was. And they actually had to recall the book and change some of it because Trump won. So he had to recalibrate this entire book that was put out and released because the fact that it was not a lasting legacy, at least in the short term for Obama, was made clear by the fact that his handpicked successor lost the 2016 election. So everything to that point kind of is John Chait angry about the fact that he had to change his book and making up for this fact that his side, the agenda that he prefers, which is keep anyone to the left of like Bill Clinton circa 1996 out of the decision-making portals of the Democratic Party, lost the ability to dictate terms in the Biden regime. And there, yes, as you say, there's a very good reason for this. Going all the way back to 2016, when Bernie Sanders won primaries and had millions and millions of people vote for him. In 2020, Sanders again won early primaries, almost won the nomination, and had millions and millions of people vote for him. And Joe Biden is a party man. Joe Biden was a neoliberal when neoliberalism was cool in the 1990s. And now in the present day, he's in the center of where the Democratic Party is today. And what he did, instead of the classic positioning of you move to the left for the primary, you move to the center for the general, what he did is he did a unity task force to try to create a popular front against Trump in 2020. And it was successful. I mean, the part of this that nobody seems to figure out is that Joe Biden won the election based on building that unity coalition, building that unity task force, and then putting together an agenda that was really based on that, at least at the domestic level, once again, to stipulate. Joe Biden didn't really have a big policy apparatus during the 2020 presidential primary. He kind of had to go to Bernie's and the Elizabeth Warrens of the world just to have something to say. It's actually an inverse of what happened after the financial crisis. There's a famous line that Tim Geithner has said often, and the line is "plan beats no plan." So after the financial crisis, the only person who came forward initially with a plan to deal with the banks was the sort of neoliberal Geithner-Summers plan. And that beat no plan, which is what everybody else had. And this is the inverse of that. So Biden didn't really have a plan for governing other than let's beat Trump and bind the nation together, right? So the plans were in the hands of the Sanders-Warren faction of the party, and the plan beat no plan. And Jonathan Chait is very upset about this. and he's trying to rewrite history essentially.
And we should say, like, what you're talking about is, I think, is fascinating. I mean, this is why when people talk about Project 2025, they get so nervous, because this is a huge plan that is there. They have not just a plan, but they also have a plan to execute the plan. They have the apparatus. They have like the personnel. Right. This rarely exists on the Democratic side. Project for American Progress existed like that for a while. I think maybe in maybe a little bit.
Well, you want to do the history? Let's do the history. So the DLC, the Democratic Leadership Council, was after the loss of Mondale
Dukakis
in '84.
Right.
Dukakis was a DLC guy, right? So he was.
Was he?
Yes.
Are you thinking of Tsongas?
Dukakis was also kind of associated with that. The whole competence frame is a very DLC frame.
He was yes, a technocrat. That was his big.
He was a technocrat. So they built over 4 years. Al Fromm and all these guys built a policy apparatus and the talent, the people to actually put it together. And the DLC took over the party essentially when Clinton won in '92, and they kept a hold on it for a long period of time. And the Center for American Progress, which you just referenced, that was kind of a presidency in waiting.
Right.
It was kind of built that way. Project 2025 is kind of an offshoot of that way of thinking, that the way you do this is through, lining everything up in advance. And Elizabeth Warren's project for the last 12 years, her mantra is personnel as policy. And she has put people in place, whether from, alumni of what she has been doing, or just, talent that she's put together and endorsed, and got them into the government. Now, it's very funny that Third Way, which is the moderate faction of the Democratic Party, I believe it's Third Way, maybe it's not them, but they put something out this week called the Moderate Talent Pipeline, which it sounds like a bunch of mediocre people. like why did you name it the Moderate Talent Pipeline? Do I want someone with moderate talent to be in my government? But they recognize that what Elizabeth Warren did, and to a lesser extent what Bernie Sanders did, was very smart. You line up the people who are able to do the job in advance. And you do that in such a way that when everybody's scrambling and looking around for people to place in the thousands, among the thousands of political appointees that are in every government, if you have the people there that are available, that's might be a place where you look. And so I think everybody's figured this out now, that this is kind of how you do it. You pregame the whole thing.
Okay, so with that said, Harris comes out with her policy statement. Give us like a, to the extent that we know. I mean, it has been fascinating, because the reason why I bring up Chait is not just because, I still remember the Iraq War, and I know that you do too, and others, but because he seems to be representative, or at least illustrative, of a huge pushback that's happening right now. Like the Washington Post editorial board came out, and said that Harris's policies are gimmicks. And Catherine Rampell, I think it is, from the Washington Post, also said, like, you're playing into Donald Trump's hands when he calls you a communist, which is, I mean, just beyond. And there's a lot of pushback, which is, it's fascinating, because there's this quality of like, well, it's gimmicks, but it's also the wrong gimmicks. You need to do something that's serious, but we don't want you to do something like that's serious in that manner. Give us a sense of like what, talk about her proposals, and what that is indicative of.
All right. There's a few things going on. So a week ago, I was actually in Las Vegas for the last of the Harris-Walz kind of barnstorming tour of battleground states. And there was one policy that was mentioned there. And that I would put actually in the category of gimmick. It was sort of a gift to the culinary union, which is very big in Las Vegas. It's the workers in the hotels. And she adopted Trump's policy of no taxes on tips, eliminating taxes for tips, which is, I think, a policy gimmick. It's also, I think, bad policy.
Right.
The idea that a retail worker making $40,000 a year and a restaurant server making $40,000 a year, one isn't taxed on those tips because of the way that they actually get the salary, and someone else is taxed on that salary because it's obtained in a different way. That seems like a bad policy idea. Also, even at that level, at the $40,000 level, most people at that level don't pay any federal tax. There's a large standard deduction. There's the earned income tax credit. There's just you're not going to do a lot for people who really need it if you eliminate taxes on tips, whereas high-end servers who don't maybe need the help as much are going to get this large tax break.
And how would that apply to Social Security tax?
Apparently, it wouldn't. Like what the Harris campaign said is, in their incarnation, it would be only on the income tax, not on the payroll tax.
Okay.
So if it was on the payroll tax, it'd be even worse, because then you'd basically just be borrowing that money and
from
not
Social Security. Yeah.
Funding Social Security, but also, those servers would get nothing in retirement because they wouldn't have paid in at that level. So it would be really bad if it was payroll tax. As income tax is just a silly kind of gimmick. I think that the benefit you get for that in Nevada, where the culinary union is really powerful, you might lose in Pennsylvania with the 90% of people who don't get their pay through tips being mad that somebody who does is getting a tax break and they're not.
Right.
So
right.
I think it's a bad idea. And I'm worried that since next year, really the whole conversation will be around taxes. The fact that now both parties support this means it might have to go into the mix. And that means a relative loss of whatever revenue that you're going to potentially get if you, raise the corporate tax or eliminate some of the Trump tax cuts on the wealthy. All that money that was going to go towards something productive is now going to go towards this gimmick of eliminating tax on tips. So I don't love the idea. And I felt like it was kind of where the political people were really driving this policy. But then we fast forward.
Let me just add, I just want to say, because we have gone over this on the show, I just want to add, you haven't even addressed the construction of this policy on the Republican side. If you look at like the Ted Cruz bill that went out there, tips could be, I'm a podcast guy, and
Absolutely.
We don't have subscriptions. We call it tips. And
we call it tips.
Send me
exactly.
And tip. And so that,
and the idea that Harris would put guardrails around that is very difficult. Anytime you have a part of the tax code that has a benefit, people are going to swim toward that part of the tax
and the wealthy
code.
People are going to be the ones who swim toward
and they know how to do it. They have the lawyers.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're going to figure it out.
So that even there's a two-part criticism. Okay, so but everything else.
Yeah, put that aside. So then we have this policy speech that's focused on the cost of living and bringing costs down. And in the interim, Harris, it leaks out that Harris is using Brian Deese, who was the head of the National Economic Council under Biden, Bharat Ramamurthy, who was the deputy to Deese, and also Elizabeth Warren, staffer and chief policy advisor. These people, Gene Sperling as well, he's a veteran of practically every administration in the last 30 years, but is very focused on the child tax credit over the last 5 years. All these people who, whether they were already there or they eventually drifted there, kind of followed the Biden trajectory, right? Of, okay, we're going with these policies of the past. We're going to focus on full employment. We're going to focus on industrial policy. We're going to focus on competition policy and aggressively enforcing antitrust. All these people suddenly are in orbit of Harris, mainly because they have the ideas. Once again, plan beats no plan, right? They're the ones who have been forming policy over the last 4 years. So we get to this North Carolina speech that Harris gives, and it's really focused in three buckets: healthcare, housing, and food, and which are the main drivers of, I think, worries about cost of living. You could throw education in there as well. They don't mention it in the speech, but those buckets are some of the biggest, right? So on housing, it's actually kind of interesting. You can see that there are two kind of competing ideas here. One is the sort of YIMBY idea that all we have to do is increase supply. There's another idea that's more focused on rent control, more focused on suppressing the ability of corporate landlords and algorithms to gouge people on prices of housing. She adopts both, essentially. She says, yeah, we're going to put money into a fund to try to increase supply. We're going to build 3 million new units, but also we're going to take the tax break away from Wall Street when they're acquiring homes and hoarding them for rent. We're going to crack down on algorithmic price fixing, like RealPage, you probably have covered in the past, which aggregates all of the information in a rental market and then encourages all of those those landlords to raise prices. So she adopts kind of both of those, right? Then in terms of healthcare, it was mostly backwards looking. Earlier last week, we found out that 10 prices on prescription drugs that were negotiated through Medicare, those prices are going to go down as much as 79% through that negotiation. It would be good if they were actually available now, but they won't be until 2026.
Right.
But you know, this is the beginning of every year we're going to get this announcement of more price drops for these prescription drugs within Medicare, and she wants to extend that to all payers, so people who aren't over 65 get the benefit of that and get the benefit of reducing, capping out-of-pocket expenses on prescription drugs, $35 a month insulin, things like that. And then we have food, and in this area, this is where the wonks have gone crazy. This is the area where the Catherine Rampels of the world have called it communist. They assume that what Harris was talking about was price controls on food. Essentially, they ran right to that conclusion. In reality, what she was calling for is not very different than what we already have on the books in about 37 states. And that is an anti-price gouging law. We don't have that at the federal level, but we have it in many states, including New York, including Texas, including Florida. And what it says is, in a time of economic stress or dislocation, a hurricane, a national emergency, you can't, as a pandemic, you can't, as a consumer or as a business, just jack up your prices. And we actually have an example of this in the pandemic. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, put out a report just a few weeks ago about what grocery businesses were doing during the pandemic. And what they were doing is they were forcing suppliers to sell to them first rather than independent stores. And that was increasing their market power, and it was leading to higher prices. It was leading to, independent stores not having any goods for sale, and also increasing prices there because they just had nothing available to people and they had to make back their profit. So this is almost a direct response to that, what Harris is talking about. It's learning from the past. We saw what happened in the pandemic, and we don't want that to happen again. Now, she's kind of, just sort of leaving it out there that, yeah, maybe this would help us in the here and now. But the way that she talks about that is she talks about the concentrations of power in the food industry. So, whether it's meat packing, meat and chicken and beef and all those companies, there's a concentration at the top in those particular industries. There's a big merger that was announced last week, proposed merger between Mars and a company called Kellanova, which is actually all of Kellogg's snack products. So there's like 50 brands now that are going to be in this new conglomeration, and that's true across the space in food companies. Unilever, ConAgra, there's a whole bunch of food companies, not many, I mean 10 maybe, that you go down the aisle and you think you have a lot of choices, and they're all one of those 10 companies, right? So breaking up those concentrations of power and trying to get more competition going in those sectors would also have the effect of depressing prices, even if it wasn't in a national emergency.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
The one question in the housing thing, one of the things that Biden had in his sort of Hail Mary period towards the end had offered, had suggested a 5% sort of national rent control. Where does that exist now?
So it wasn't mentioned in the Friday speech. However, Kamala Harris has talked about that on the campaign trail and other speeches. So as far as as I can tell, that's still a live issue. And now let's be clear that all of these are proposals. They're campaign proposals. If we don't get 50 votes in the Senate, we're not going to get any of these things. And we should be clear about that. But
I want to go because there's a meta question about that in a second that I want to get to. But yeah, with that caveat in mind, moving to the prescription drugs, that 79% reduction in those 10 Medicare drugs, the Biden administration's had to provide like subsidies to the insurance companies because they're so reliant, it seems to me, on those expenses. Explain that for me briefly.
Yeah.
But also
specifically, yeah.
I do know that she also mentioned the middlemen. One of your bailiwicks, the prescription benefit management companies, who are also now the insurance companies.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so let's take those two in kind. So first, the situation with insurance companies is really about the out-of-pocket cap. So if you think about this, if you have an out-of-pocket cap on all your prescription drugs, this year for seniors it's $3,000 a year. Next year it goes down to $2,000 a year. The rest of that money, so if you're above that cap in terms of what you're paying and what you should be liable for out of pocket, the insurance company has to pay that, right? So the insurance companies are saying, well, hey, you put a cap here and now we got to pay the rest of it. Keep in mind, this is Medicare Part D, which are all private plans. There is no public Medicare Part D. The prescription drug benefit in Medicare, which was passed by George W. Bush, was an entirely private system. So these private Part D plans are saying, well, now we're going to have to bear the burden of these catastrophic, prescription drug costs that go above the cap. And so we're going to increase prescription drug prices for premiums, or for the Part D premium. We're going to increase the premium. And what the Biden administration said, okay, as a demonstration project, we will subsidize you for 3 years. They can do that under the Medicare laws. We're going to subsidize you so you can't increase the price that much. So it's a cat and mouse game that's going on there. The real answer, of course, is to fold everything back into traditional Medicare so they can spread the costs, right? So instead of, because these are Part D plans, they just do prescription drugs. So if you increase the cost of prescription drugs, they have nowhere else to go to make profit, right? They have nowhere else to go to cover it. If it's all within Medicare, they can reduce utilization here. They can, not pay for as expensive treatments. I mean, people don't like this, but there are also ways to reduce admissions.
It's the efficiency
through preventative care, the efficiency, all of that stuff
that exists in terms of like volume.
So that's kind of the dynamic there. Now, talking about PBMs, yes, I was very pleased to see in the Friday speech, Kamala Harris talk about pharmacy benefit managers, which are these middlemen that sit in between health plans and drug companies and pharmacies, and they're the only ones that know what anybody is paying for what, so that it's very easy for them to skim off the top. They're supposed to negotiate rebates with drug companies and pass those savings on, but they realize that the higher the list price, the higher the rebate they can get. And they keep a lot of those rebates. And so this actually has the effect of pushing prices up rather than bringing prices down. There is a great bill, bipartisan bill, by the way, in Congress that may well get a vote by the end of the year. And it would be good for Harris to actually endorse that bill. Jake Auchincloss, who's from Massachusetts, is the co-sponsor on the Democratic side. I'm not sure I remember who the co-sponsor on the Republican side is, but it would increase transparency. It would crack down. It would say all rebates have to go to the individual and to the health plan. It would crack down on the kinds of things where they steer drug plans to, or steer patients to get their drugs through mail order pharmacies rather than independent pharmacies. They run the mail order pharmacies, the PBMs. So of course they're steering people towards that option. And yes, as you say,
constant calls from CVS. They're my PBM care, whatever and I cannot tell you. I hear from them more than I do my kids about signing up for their.
And CVS, just to your point, CVS bought Aetna a few years back. And so they're with a large health insurance company. The other two big PBMs and the top three control about 85% of all drug transactions. Express Scripts is part of Cigna, and Optum Rx is part of United Health. So now when you're talking about PBMs, you're really talking about the insurance companies. And the insurance companies have managed this game so that they know more about drug transactions than anybody else in the system. And they can extract from all of those other players for their own benefit. And so Congress catching on to that. I'm glad to see Harris, aware of it as well.
All right. So overall, it's clear that there.
Whoa.
I don't know what that's about.
Congratulations.
I have no idea why I did that. I got to somehow figure out how to turn that off. I know if I do,
or on, or just have it on all the time. Yeah,
I got a problem with that.
Oh, that's cool.
Too. I don't know how to turn this off. But it's clear that there is a sense that Harris is extending the Biden is extending Bidenomics, and again, just proposals, whether she can implement, whether she intends to implement. But let's talk about that meta story, because what does it tell us? Because I feel like the lesson about the Obama years that the Biden people supposedly learned, and I feel like they learned it to some extent. I feel like to some extent they didn't, particularly in terms of Biden wanting to try and make the Build Back Better bipartisan. That was the beginning of the end of that, it seems to me. He brought the Republicans in, and then when they couldn't come up with anything, he brought in Sinema and Portman, as supposedly to do due diligence, and that's where things fell apart. It gave Manchin and opponents of this time to sort of organize. But one of the other things that I think Obama did is he won his election with a certain constituency that I think for a lot of us, he betrayed in some ways. I mean, he ran, there was a lot of people saying he's not an ideologue, and he was using populist words maybe, but did not deliver on those policies, largely speaking. He said he was going to put on his soft shoes and walk with unions. And when there was a huge opportunity for that in Wisconsin, he didn't do it. And that ended up costing Democrats 1,000 seats over the course of 8 years. 1,000 seats. A whole class or two of Democrats couldn't run for governor, because they were wiped out. And now we're seeing the resurgence of that. Like when we have 6 governors now who could have been vice president. That's what this is about in many ways. And the opposite happened with Hillary Clinton, right? You had Chuck Schumer going out there for every blue collar worker we lose in Pittsburgh, we pick up 2 in the Philly suburbs. I don't know if it was Schumer or if it was Ed Randell who said that, but regardless, that seemed to be the idea. We want to manage who elects us on some, there's only a certain amount of latitude with this because the Democrats are the Democrats and the Republicans are the Republicans, but you try and create your constituency, and then you can follow policies that will satisfy them or not. And if you don't satisfy the constituency that elected you, you're going to have trouble in the off-year election and in the following re-election. And so what does it tell us that she's coming out and campaigning this way?
I mean, everything's still contingent. I think the term I saw used in the New York Times was strategic vagueness. I think that's kind of the hallmark of where we're at with Kamala Harris now. She certainly has.
That's also the case on foreign policy, but we're not talking about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. She certainly has some advisors that are committed, I think, to furthering the Biden agenda. And I think she has some advisors that are committed to breaking with the Biden agenda. And I think, in 2008, we heard a lot about Barack Obama's team of rivals, that he was putting this Lincoln-esque team of people who just didn't like each other together and trying to get the best policy out of that. And it was all crap. It wasn't true at all. Everybody was very much on the same wavelength. I think with Harris,
Robert Rubin's wavelength,
the Robert Rubin policy, exactly. I think with Harris, you're seeing more of a possible actual team of rivals. That there is some understanding that she's getting advice from a lot of different directions. And I think it's going to be a jump ball in terms of where she's actually going to go. I mean, you don't know what the crises are that are going to come up. You don't know where, she's going to have the opportunity to make, a real difference. I think that, as far as everything that's come out, you have to sort of assess it of, okay, are these legislative ideas or are these, administrative ideas? And, a number of the things she talked about in that speech on Friday, she could do on her own, continue the aggressive antitrust enforcement that we see.
Yep.
In terms of the healthcare stuff, there's a lot you can do on the side, not just keeping going the negotiations on prescription drugs, which she's obviously going to do, but there's even more that can be done. So, we'll be readying as the fall goes on the sort of next edition of the day one agenda to see,
yes, I bet.
to figure out what what we could actually possibly do. So I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity there. And the question will be whether Harris will take it. But, we still have 77 days or whatever until the election. She's got to win that first.
Maybe this is for a different interview, but I'm curious as to the strategy of the progressives to hang in there with Biden. And essentially what it looked like to basically say, we want X, Y, and Z policies. And he came out with some of those sort of lefty, the 5% rent cap and
there was Supreme Court stuff,
reform, and
all of which Harris has held on to, by the way. I mean, so in that sense, you have to say, well, what the progressives did ended up, having at least some impact. Harris is going out with that same Supreme Court reform program. She's held on to, at least rhetorically, the rent stuff. I think what's clear is that, Harris's concept of how she's going to win this election is she's going to speak to where voters are in terms of cost of living. She's going to speak to the other popular parts of the Biden agenda without being Biden. And that seems to have worked, right? I mean, if you look at the polls,
so far,
she is not being blamed on the economy for certain things. In other contexts, she's kind of not being blamed for Gaza in certain ways. And, she's been able to show some distance because people simply don't believe she was at the center of those policies being made. And so she's able to articulate, a lot of this stuff that she did last Friday was already the Biden agenda.
Right.
She's just articulating it in a different way and without the baggage of being tied to someone who was 81 years old and wasn't able to sell the policies very well.
All right, last question, because this sort of ties in and undercuts, or I should say undergirds a lot of all of this conversation. Inflation. Give me your sense and the sense of like where the I guess the academic research is on this. What contributed to inflation, and if you can give me percentages, because I'm spending my time interspersed with my woodworking Instagram accounts that I follow. Like I get a couple like these, I don't know, they're like investment people or something, and they'll say something about inflation, and that's the only time I comment on anything. I'm like, it wasn't because we flooded the country with money. But tell us what the research says.
Well, it's very clear. You just look, every country on earth had pretty much the same arc in terms of inflation. After the initial stages of the pandemic, inflation went up, and in the last couple of years, it has eased. Now, if you look at the United States trajectory, it eased at a greater degree than any other country in the world, industrialized country at least, and is now sitting, if you look at certain measures, it's sitting at the Federal Reserve target. If you look at other measures, it's slightly above the Federal Reserve target of 2%. And all these other countries in the world, they didn't increase spending to the same degree as us, or
relative to their GDP, right?
Relative to GDP. Right. The idea that that spending alone was responsible for our inflationary period, you have to sort of put blinders on to the rest of the world, which had varying degrees of spending and yet the exact same trajectory, the same parabolic arc. And so I think it's rather silly to say that. It's obvious that there were supply chain issues that we've written about pretty extensively. Right. And when those supply chain problems eased, we got to a place where inflation came down. It wasn't really due to the increase in interest rates. What that has done is mainly depressed investment
and raised cost of rent, it seems to me.
And raised costs, in fact, particularly around housing, because that's a very common channel. Mortgage rates went up. Yep. Investment ended up dropping down. In fact, the Inflation Reduction Act, which flooded a lot of money toward investment into the system, a lot of that was kind of blunted, not a lot, but a good deal of it was blunted by the Federal Reserve interest rate increase. If they didn't increase to the degree that they have, or if they have taken it down, which they probably will do in September, at least a beginning of it, then we probably would have had more. If you look at manufacturing construction, it's a straight line up for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's because of the IRA. And if the Fed wasn't trying to sort of counteract that, it would probably be in more of a straight line up. And those are eventually going to translate into jobs because the factories get built after a certain period. The construction is done, and then we get we get the production jobs out of that. I wrote about this quite a bit in my 2-year kind of summary of the IRA.
Yeah, we're going to link to that. People should read that. I just wanted to add a couple other things. I mean, you have that dispositive argument in terms of relative to other countries, but we also can see, increased prices significantly at various food chains and whatnot, and then massive stock buybacks and massive dividends paid out to shareholders. And the margins in food went up, like they spiked to a point where, in other words, those are profits. And
right. And what we saw in America is corporate profits around 2022 spiked. They reset at a higher level, and even though inflation has dropped, they've stayed there. Those corporate price margins have stayed higher despite the easing of input costs through inflation. And we wrote about this in our pricing issue. The pandemic provided an opportunity to use these new strategies, whether it was technological or using surveillance tactics to know what you buy and know what you're going to prefer. And that all has increased the surplus for those companies relative to consumers. And just to take this back sort of full circle, I think when you hear a Jonathan Chait saying these are bad ideas to crack down on price gouging, or Catherine Rampell to say that these are communist ideas to crack down on price gouging, they fundamentally don't buy the story that we just have expressed here.
That's why
they fundamentally disagree with it. They look at Econ 101, supply and demand. There was too much money in the economy. The demand went up, and that's why the price went up. And as that's being reduced by the Federal Reserve, then the price goes back down. It's pretty clear to me that is not the case. That's not what the data show. And everything kind of flows from there. There is an ideological battle around the economy between the people who were very comfortable with the Clinton and Obama neoliberal era, and the people who forwarded this change in philosophy under Biden. And we'll see what happens in the future. And that fight is playing out now amid a new presidential candidate who is not who may be something of a jump ball. Was a lot of her thoughts on this haven't been super well known. People were projecting their wishes onto her. People like Reid Hoffman going out and saying, fire Lena Khan. And so there's this sort of warfare going on between these two philosophies in this sort of battle for the soul of Kamala Harris, if you want to talk about it that way. And that speech last week shows that the Biden side has a leg up. I think that's the way to say it.
Great way to summarize it. David Dayen, always a pleasure. We're going to link to all the pieces we mentioned today at the American Prospect, but while you're over at the American Prospect, I'm sure by the time we air this, there's going to be a lot more, and at the convention.
Yes, I will tell you. We have 4 or 5 people who are going to be at the convention. We're going to be writing dispatches every day while we're there. All of them are going to be on prospect.org/DNC-2024. And it'll be the whole site. I mean, we're devoting the whole site to the DNC this week. So if you just go to prospect.org, you'll find it. And we're going to be giving you as much of the color of the convention. You've been to conventions. They're strange places. There's if you just listen on TV, you hear about fighting corporate America and bringing a policy back to the people. And then if you go outside, you see every major corporation holding a cocktail hour, right? So they're odd places, and our goal is going to be to bring you the side of the convention that you don't often see if you're just watching on television. So we're going to try to bring you the newsmakers, the ostentatious display of wealth that you see at these things, and give you a real flavor for that.
David Dayen, American Prospect, thanks so much. We will link to all that coverage as well.
Thank you.
We are back, folks, and we are going to wrap up the free part of this program and head into the fun half. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with David Dayen and Sam. I heard a little bit of it, but the economic piece, particularly the antitrust, and keeping on Lena Khan is going to be one of the things that we need to push the Harris campaign to stick to, including Gaza policy. I think these are the 2 pressure points here continuing down this like antitrust path, as well as, of course, changing course on Gaza. So I'm glad that Sam was able to grab David before he headed to the DNC so they could have that discussion. By the way, this program relies on your support. So if you would like to support us, if you want to see this show continue for years to come, to give you this kind of coverage, you can go to jointhemajorityreport.com and become a member where you can IM the show. We read your IMs on air, including IMs like this. Super Seeger, Sam is not beating the boomer allegations with that Zoom background snafu. He doesn't seem to know how to turn off that feature, it appears.
Yeah, there's been about 3 instances where he's pretty much every time he's recorded at his own location through Zoom, he has, if he does a thumbs up, they'll get a little thumb up bubble that comes up, which is nice. And I think we just have to accept it that Sam might have fireworks going on behind him through the miracle of AI, which is going to change all of our lives, and you could just get a little taste there.
Right. Oh my gosh. It's
the
like
value add is
like,
crazy.
It's like seeing Michelangelo paint right in front of me when you see how AI is changing Zoom calls.
Hurry, tech officers, please invest billions of dollars into this technology.
That's apparently falling off a cliff a little bit. Well, that's something to watch.
Who could have foresaw that?
Teacher Dan says, explain how not taxing a low-wage wait staff tips doesn't help them again. It's not more money in their pockets. Teacher Dan, I didn't hear how Sam and David were talking about it, but I think the point is not that it doesn't help them. It's just that it's probably bad policy.
I can explain how it won't help them. What if, for instance, the earned income tax credit policy doesn't judges that as pure income and all of a sudden moves them out of a more expanded EITC credit, which puts them back at 0.
Ooh.
So yeah, very easily it could do that.
She's apparently rolling out like income requirements for this, where she's saying that like the no tax on tips thing would be if you earn under 75K. I still don't like that as much as, say, fighting for eliminating the sub minimum wage for tipped workers. That's a policy where that helps everybody, and then also doesn't create some of these unnecessary carve-outs where there could be loopholes exploited by maybe categorizing something as tipped work that isn't tipped work, for example.
The frame also, raises for American workers should not be coming from what they pay into the government. Now, I'm fine generally with say, incentivizing labor income over passive income, which is the opposite of what we do in this country. But I think that the raise should come from the share that goes to bosses and not from the government, typically. And I think that's generally the stance to take. And the tip economy itself is one not set up for the benefit of the workers.
The tip economy was an invention of post-slavery America as a way to get out of paying largely black workers a wage that was living.
And
so
it's pure patriarchal.
It's a relic.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are certain areas of the country where, like for instance, Las Vegas, where you might be able to use that to divide the working class along policy lines like that. But the overall emphasis and why people are a little bit resentful of that is that system doesn't work for most people.
Yeah.
It's not everyone is getting the giant Las Vegas tips from high rollers that are 4 drinks in.
Right.
So we need to what I think, and this is still a shift in the political economy of the Democratic Party, is we need to be doing these things through like minimum wages and health benefits and things like that, and also forcing bosses to pay more of their employees more.
Teacher Dan says, yes, fight off lower wages for tip work. Thanks again for explaining. Io and Ryan, I waited tables for years, and you only have to claim a certain amount. It's best to claim everything so you have a better credit. Emma is right. Get rid of sub-minimum wage. That's something I'd prefer. Look, there's so much flexibility at this point. This was an ask seemingly from the unions in Nevada, and this is a cynical political move, I think, to try to get Nevada, and
if you're going to do bad
she's
policy,
trying to outflank. But yeah,
to me, if you're going to do a bad policy, it's if a union's asking for it, that's one of the better reasons to do it.
And I think that the fact that she's coming out today by saying that there's going to be an income cap means this is flexible. She just wants to give into the union ask and then move in a direction where like there's a lot of ways that we can go in terms of tips. So I don't necessarily think this is like set. I think she was just trying to subvert what Trump was doing here, in the way that like JD Vance said, "Oh, I'm for the child tax credit.
Right.
I'm for $5,000," and then
Me
she
too.
comes out and she goes, "I'm for $6,000 in the first year." And but what's also important is that the Republicans are way more disingenuous about their claims, specifically on the child tax credit, because JD Vance missed the vote for the last effort to expand the child tax credit. He just didn't show up. And then when it was a part of the negotiations that, Manchin took a hatchet to, JD Vance was running for Congress and running for Senate, I should say. And so you can't find how he voted on that, but you can see how literally every Republican basically voted against it. And every Democrat, or most Democrats besides Manchin and stuff, were for it. So, it's a way to kind of sideline the gimmicks that are not sincere from the Trump campaign, and I'm fine with that from an electoral politics standpoint.
Yeah, but like that doesn't mean the principle of we should be chasing who can lower taxes more is a good one.
Yeah.
And like the idea that it's like more money in working people's pockets, like there's other ways to do that besides lowering the amount that they contribute to society.
Exactly. So with that said, again, join themajorityreport.com. Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Left Reckoning last night. I had Elias Cepeda on, who is doing some of the protests with PSL and some of the other organizations outside the DNC. We also talked in the postgame, patreon.com/Left Reckoning, about 10 minutes worth of Russell Brand's show, Kamala's Communist Agenda Exposed. I got people might know that I have like sort of a long history of I probably listen to more Russell Brand than anyone else, to my shame, I guess now. But back like 15 years ago.
I saw him live.
I saw him live out in Nassau Coliseum in Long Island. Actually, the first few weeks I lived in New York. He's an insane person. He covered this Doritos Gate. Have you heard of Doritos Gate?
Oh, yes, apparently, because Kamala Harris wanted Doritos at her stop at Sheetz in Western Pennsylvania. Definitely superior to Wawa, by the way.
So we played Russell Brand spent about 6 minutes on that, so we watched that. And also he spent 2 minutes on another issue, which is almost as important as Doritos Gate, which is people protesting the Democrats' complicity in genocide at the DNC. And he covered that by saying, isn't it weird how this person protesting the Democrats is wearing a mask because they care about COVID, some things which Russell says might not even happen at all. Like he's worthless idiot.
He's just whoring himself out for a check at this point.
Yeah.
Has his acting career dried up because he's been credibly accused of sexual assault?
I think so. And he's a distressed asset that's been bought up by venture capitalists who Cantor Fitzgerald Acquisition Corporation, aka Rumble, which is a publicly traded corporation, bought him for cheap. And now he's doing, and it's funny because he's like, look at all these TikTokers that the DNC is paying to like artificially, market the party. And it's like, first of all, yeah, that happens. Welcome to politics. Like the Rat Pack was doing shit for the Kennedys. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but also, bro, you interviewed Ron DeSantis for 45 minutes on Rumble's platform.
Yeah.
Like, was that an authentic interaction? Was that just because you were seeking truth with your awakening wonders? So yeah, as you can tell, I got a little bit animated. And so patreon.com/Left Reckoning if you want to hear us go into that.
Cantor Fitzgerald Acquisition Corporation, that's Rumble, but Cantor Fitzgerald, its chief executive, was just having dinner with Donald Trump and Bill Ackman and a bunch of other billionaire people.
All supporters of Israel, I imagine, too.
Oh, yeah.
So, interesting.
Interesting. On ESPN, we spoke a bit about the WNBA and this like truncated playoff race because like they're cramming in a bunch of games before the playoffs start after the Olympics, and Caitlin Clark breaking the rookie assist record. And then we also talked a bit about preseason ball. Some of the good: Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, maybe the best rookie quarterback class since. Oh God, I don't know. I would have to think about it, but looks like it could be.
Consult your notebooks.
I would have to. And then versus my quarterback, Daniel Jones, coming back off an ACL and immediately throwing a pick six. I don't want to talk about it, but I did talk about it. youtube.com/ESVN show. People are really upset about my take on sheets. I mean, look, I went to college in Pennsylvania, and Wawa is rich man's Panera in the sense of like, sometimes these things taste a little bit too much like hospital food. Like, I would rather have sheets and the fries there than I would have like some of the stuff from Wawa just feels a little like a little bit of a cafeteria situation. Anyway, that's just my take. I don't know what to tell you. All right, guys. Well, you know what? No calls today. We'll take calls tomorrow. We're going to take calls tomorrow.
We're working 2 doubles. Well, I worked double last night too, so we're working doubles in a row here, folks.
Yes, and we have just so many fun clips. So I wanted to get to all that.
Oh yeah,
stuff.
you haven't seen Crowder in a while. Well, he's back.
Yes, we have Crowder.
Hysterical as ever.
We have Ilhan Omar speaking at the Uncommitted rally just minutes ago, and we also have some more footage from the DNC. So stay tuned, folks. Become a member if you want access to this. We'll see you in the fun half.
Okay, Emma, please.
Well, I feel that my voice is sorely lacking on the majority report.
Wait, look, Sam is unpopular.
I do deserve a vacation at Disney World. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome Emma to the show.
It is Thursday.
I think you need to take over for Sam.
Yes, please.
No. I'm gonna pause you right there.
Wait, what?
You can't encourage Emma to live like this. And I'll tell you why. She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
What?
Tour, sushi, and poker.
Tim's upset.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. She was offered a tour, sushi, and
that's what we call it in the biz.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Right.
Tour, sushi, and poker.
We're gonna get demonetized.
I just think that what you did to Tim Pool was mean.
Free speech.
That's not what we're about here. Look at how sad he's become now. You shouldn't even talk about it because I think you're responsible.
I probably am in a certain way, but let's get to the meltdown here.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Oh my God.
Tour,
wow.
Sushi. I'm sorry, I'm losing my fucking mind. She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Logic.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Tour.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid.
I had this debate 7,000 times.
A little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour. I'm losing my fucking mind.
Some people just don't understand.
So I'm not trying to be a dick right now, but like I absolutely think the U.S. should be providing me with a wife and kids.
That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, all right.
It's not a fun job.
Tour? That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing. Willy Wonka tour? That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing. What's that offered a tour? That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing. That's a tour? A real thing. That's real thing. Real thing. What's that offered a tour?
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Rogan has done it again.
That offered a tour? That's a real thing. That's poker with the boys.
I think he might be blowing it out of proportion.
Real thing. That's poker with the boys. That offered a tour? That's a real thing. That's poker.
Let's go, Joey.
Tour? Sushi and poker with the boys.
Take it easy, Glenn.
Tour? Sushi and poker.
Things have really gotten out of hand.
Sushi and poker with the boys.
Delusional.
Tour?
Deluded.
Sushi.
You don't have a clue as to what's going on. Live YouTube.